You have lived a life you cannot remember. There was a time when you were completely new to this world, when every face was a mystery, every sound was alien, every sensation was the first of its kind. You learned the most complex skill a human being ever learns: language. You went from screaming and pointing to forming sentences in the space of a couple of years. You were experiencing things constantly, deeply, intensely. Every moment was genuinely new, and you remember none of it. Ask yourself when your earliest memory is. Think about it. For most people, the first thing they can genuinely recall is somewhere around 3 to 3.5 years old. Some people have a fragment at 2.5. Very few people have anything solid before that. And almost nobody has a single image, a single feeling, a single moment from their first year of life. A year of your life is gone. More than a year, actually. For most of us, the first 2 years are a complete blank. Psychologists call this infantile amnesia, and for a long time the explanation seemed obvious. Babies are too young, their brains aren't developed enough, they can't form memories because the machinery isn't there yet. But here's the thing, that explanation is wrong, or at least it's far more complicated than that, because when researchers actually started studying infant memory, they found something that breaks the simple story completely. Babies can remember things. They remember plenty. In a now famous series of experiments, a developmental psychologist named Carolyn Rovee Collier showed that infants as young as 2 months old can learn and remember. She tied a ribbon from a baby's ankle to a mobile hanging above the crib. The baby figured out pretty quickly that kicking made the mobile move, and they loved it. They'd kick and kick and kick and watch the mobile spin. Then she came back 2 weeks later, an eternity in baby time, and hooked the ribbon back up, and the babies started kicking immediately. They remembered. A 2-month-old who is supposedly can't form memories remembered a specific thing they had learned 2 weeks ago. Older infants remembered even longer. 6 months old could retain things for weeks. 18 months old could watch an adult perform a sequence of actions and reproduce that sequence a full year later. So the memories are going in. The infant brain is absolutely capable of encoding experiences, storing them, retrieving them. The machinery works. Which makes the question so much harder. If babies can form memories, why can't adults remember being babies? The answer isn't that the memories were never made. It's that they don't survive the journey to adulthood. Something happens along the way and wipes them out. And figuring out what that something is has taken researchers decades, and the full answer is still not completely settled, but we have some very good leads. The first one is language. Think about how you remember things. When you recall a memory, a birthday, an argument, a trip you went somewhere, how does it exist in your mind? For most people, memories aren't purely visual or sensory. They're wrapped in words. You remember what was said. You narrate the memory to yourself. You have a story of your thoughts. A pre-verbal infant has none of that scaffolding. They've experienced the world in pure sensation. Sight, sound, touch, hunger, warmth, comfort, fear, but none of it is attached to language. None of it has a narrative structure. There's no story being told because there's no language to tell it in. And when that child eventually learns to talk, learns to think in words, learns to organize their experience into sentences and stories, the memories from before language simply don't have a translation. They exist in a format the older brain can no longer read, like a file saved in a software that no longer exists. The data might technically be there somewhere, but you can't open it. This theory explains a lot. It explains why children in bilingual households sometimes have early memories tied to one language that they can't access when thinking in another. It explains why the sharpest early memories people do have often involve some sort of kind of verbal exchange. Something someone said to them, a word they learned, a song. Language is a frame memory holds on to. But language alone doesn't explain everything. Because there are animals that don't use language at all, and they show signs of infantile amnesia. Rats, mice, monkeys, they can learn things as infants and later lose access to those memories too. Language can't be the whole story. So the second lead is hippocampus. The hippocampus is a structure deep in your brain that is absolutely essential for forming new long-term memories. If your hippocampus is damaged, you can still remember everything from before the damage, but you cannot form new lasting memories going forward. You're stuck. Every new experience evaporates within minutes. The hippocampus in a human infant is not fully developed. It's there, it's working in a basic sense, but it is structurally immature. The neurons are there, but they're not fully connected. The circuits that support long-term episodic memory, the kind of memory that lets you replay a specific event from your past, those circuits are still being built. And here's where it gets really interesting. The hippocampus doesn't fully mature in a vacuum. It matures through a process called neurogenesis. It's a creation of new neurons, and in infancy, the rate of neurogenesis in the hippocampus is extraordinarily high. New neurons are being created constantly. The brain is building itself in almost frantic pace. This sounds like it should help memory. More neurons, better memory, right? Actually, it's the opposite. Researchers now believe that the rapid neurogenesis is one of the primary reasons memories don't stick. When you flood a memory circuit with the massive numbers of new neurons, those new neurons don't strengthen existing connections. They disrupt them. They overwrite. The process that is building the brain is simultaneously erasing what was just stored there. It's like trying to write something down on a page that is actively rewriting underneath you. The pen is moving, the words are forming, but the page keeps changing. This has actually been tested directly. When researchers in animal studies suppress neurogenesis in infant animals, when they slow down the process of new neuron creation, the animals retain more of their early memories into adulthood. And conversely, when they artificially ramp up the neurogenesis in adult animals, those adults start showing amnesia for recent experiences that they should have been able to remember. The very engine of the brain developing is the engine of an infant forgetting. There's a third piece of this, and it has to do with the concept of a self. To have an autobiographic memory, a memory you experience as something that happened to you, you need to have yourself to experience it. You need a sense that there is a continuous I that exists through time, that the person who had experience and the person who is remembering are the same person. Infants don't have that. Well, not fully, not at first. The sense of self develops gradually. Research suggests that a stable vision of the self, the kind needed to anchor personal memories to, doesn't really come together until sometime between 2 and 4 years old, which maps almost perfectly onto the window of infantile amnesia. It's not just that babies can't form strong memories, it's that there's no fully formed self there to have been a subject to these memories. When you try to remember being 1 year old, you're not trying to access old files, you're trying to access files that were never labeled in your name. Now, here's where it gets philosophically strange, and I think this is the part worth sitting with. All of this learning you did as a baby, the language acquisition, the object permanence, learning to recognize faces and read expressions, learning how gravity works, how to control your own body, all of that learning happened. It shaped you. It is in you. The person you are right now is built on that foundation. You just can't see that foundation. In other words, your first step, the first time you recognize your mother's face, these are moments that genuinely happen to you. They change the wiring of your brain. They are, in some sense, the most formatable experiences of your life, and they are completely inaccessible. There's a version of you that existed, that cried and laughed and reached for things and was terrified and then comforted. That version of you was real. It felt things, it learned things. It was alive in the most immediate, unfiltered way a person is ever alive. And from where you're standing now, that person is a complete stranger. Some researchers have pointed out something almost poetic about this. The fact that we don't remember infancy means that for all of us, the experience of being utterly new to the world, the experience of pure, unfiltered, unnarrated existence, that experience is permanently outside the reach of memory. You can't revisit it, you can't analyze it, you can only know intellectually that it happened. There is something you experienced once, completely, that you will never be able to recall. And in some way, the brain was furiously writing itself the way new neurons were flooding in and overwriting and rebuilding. Maybe that forgetting wasn't incidental. Maybe the brain, in an act of becoming what it needed to become, had to let go of what it was, had to clear space, had to burn the scaffolding. You don't remember being built, but here you are. Perfect. Just like you always have been.